Good evening. I'd like to call the Alton Board of Selectmen's meeting to order February 26, 2021 at 6:02. Until further notice, to keep our members and staff safe and to comply with the RSA 91-A with state of emergency and governor's orders, restriction on public gatherings, the town of Alton has moved from in-person meetings to remote audio participation meetings. To remotely attend the meetings, audio only, visit our website, www.alton.nh.gov. For telephone access and remote access instructions listed under news and announcements on the home page, or telephone the Selectmen's office 603-875-2113 or 603-875-0229 between 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. for the dial-in code and the meeting ID for each Selectmen's meeting. If you please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, moment of silence. Mr. Whitman, if you can lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I need approval of the agenda.
Motion, we approve the agenda as read.
Second.
Motion been made by Mr. McDonald to approve the agenda as submitted. Second by Mr. Whitman. Discussion.
Could I add a couple things on the whole business? Default budget and Bay Hill Road. I'll have some information during the TA report I got. We were asked to talk to our reps, and I talked to all three of them, and I got some information. So.
Okay, so you're going to do that in the Selectmen's report?
Yeah, I suppose I could. I just have something to pass out to everybody.
Okay, so we'll do that in Selectmen's report. Made by Mr. Holt to amend the budget for old business number 2, default budget in Bay Hill Road. Do I have a second to his motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Whitman. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion to approve the agenda as amended. I just need a new motion to that effect now, or as presented with the amendment, which Virgil made, Mr. Whitman second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. I'll hold the board. Virgil?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Announcements. The town clerk and tax collector's office will be closed on Tuesday, March 9th for the town school elections, which will be held at St. Catherine Drexel Church, lower level, Hidden Springs Road, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Submission of public comments, questions, and concern. As you gentlemen remember, we asked Mr. Howard to submit a response to a letter that came in from a citizen, which would like to be in the record. First one is, hi Mary, I put my rebuttal in the town hall mailbox. I could not scan it to email, sorry. I would like to have this read into public input at the next meetings. Members of the board at the last meeting, February 8th, a request was made by the town of Portsmouth to lobby against House Bill 504. The town of Alton pays dues as members of the municipal association. They are a lobbying group as founded. If the association will not lobby against this legislation for us, or any of the towns involved, then maybe we should leave this association on dues and use these funds to join Portsmouth in their plan. Thank you, Raymond J. Howard, Jr. A letter from Raymond Howard for his rebuttal, dated February 15, 2021. Thank you for letting me submit a letter of rebuttal to the request that came before the board on January 11, 2021. And to explain my actions. As elected officials, we know we have to accept constructive criticism for what it is. I only that it be honest. What was presented to the board by Mr. Wright was anything but honest. The document that was presented to this board for consideration was only 3 pages of a 9-page document entitled Termination of Office and Termination of State. This omission, in legal terms, is a deliberate omission of evidence. The board has been asked to hold a special election, but my seat has not been vacated. The only way that can happen if I send a letter of resignation to the Speaker of the House and he accepts it or I am impeached. Neither has happened. I would like this board to understand what I have done is representing a group of upstanding inhabitants of New Hampshire, just as I did with the rumble strips issue here in town. The process leading to this termination document started September 7, 2017. A request by 7 citizens and myself was made to meet with the governor. We were only allowed a meeting with the governor's legal counsel, John Formilla. At that meeting, we spelled out 30 ongoing constitutional violations in a 16-page report. The response from the governor's office was total silence. Ever since then, we have followed every constitutional process to have our grievances redressed. With all efforts being ineffectual, our only constitutional right left was Article 10, Part 1st, the Bill of Rights, right of revolution, and that is what I signed. I will not go into all the details of our 38-month-long struggle for justice. I will address the subject matter in the request before this board. Starting with the state versus state, many of you probably think we are sovereign. We are a sovereign state as applied in Article 7, Part 1st of the Hampshire Constitution. In the document, State versus State enclosed, it explains what the capital S for state, sovereign country, versus lowercase s for the state statutory state means. In 1970, the conversion to a statutory state took place in New Hampshire without the people's knowledge or consent. For proof of this, look at Article 84, Part 2nd, Oath of Civil Officers. The oath is quoted in the 1-11-21 email sent by Mr. Wright. In the oath, you will notice that the United States of America is all capital letters, and all references to the state of New Hampshire is lowercase for state. If you read the Constitution at the bottom of Article 84, it will say, amended in 1970, adding allegiance to the United States of America. As a result, we now have a statutory state within a state. In other words, New Hampshire is now a territory of the United States. As for the lawful election complaint, look at the change that was made to Article 11, first part, elections of elective franchise. The past election cycle, which took place without amending the Constitution, absentee voting in Article 11, has two allowable reasons. They are absence from the city or town of which they are inhabitants, or by reason of physical disability or unable to vote in person. There is no mention of being afraid of disease or death. So in violation of Article 5, Part 2nd, power to make laws, no law shall be made to the same be not repugnant or contrary to the Constitution. That is exactly what was done by altering Article 11, making the last election invalid and unconstitutional. These are only two of the 30 violations in the 16-page report we presented to the governor that pertain to the request by Mr. Wright, and that we, the people, are trying to have addressed by our government. Another constitutional violation in our report is one that this board has talked about recently having to deal with in House Bill 504, HB 504. Will create donut towns, which violates Article 5, Part 2nd, imposes fines and assesses taxes. It states all taxation shall be proportional. Taking taxpayer money from one town and giving it to another town is not proportional. This is a clear violation of our Constitution and the law of our land. In closing, I have one question to the board. Do we have a Constitution, the law of the land or not? Thank you again for giving me this opportunity to respond to the unfounded accusation. If anyone would like to join our efforts into restoring our Bill of Rights and constitutional republic or get more information, please reach out to me. Sincerely, Raymond Howard, Jr., New Hampshire State Representative. Thank you, Mr. Howard. Gentlemen satisfied?
Yep.
Moving on to appointments. New business, Robertson Green 2019 Town Audit. Do we have the folks with us tonight, Josh?
Good evening, this is Tim Green. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Green. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. So sorry, continue.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead, sir.
I'll just go and jump into it. I was asked to come and present the audit, as you said, for the year ended December 31st, 2019. In this format, I think I was just going to try to give you a brief highlights and then, answer any questions that anyone may have. So, and I understand that you may have the audit in front of you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So the page 1 is basically what we are hired for. We are hired to give an opinion on your financial statements, of which is the bulk of that report that you're looking at. So our product essentially is that first 2-page report, independent auditor's report. I can announce to you that we gave you a clean opinion for the year ended December 31st, 2019. You get an opinion on each of your major funds as well as your governmental activities, which is a overall financial position for the town. And then we also give you an opinion on your remaining funds that are minor, that are kind of aggregated into one number. So, as I said, clean opinion, nothing of note in that letter to highlight. So I would move on to Exhibit 1 and 2. This is starting on page 3. This is your governmental activities. This, you can see that the town ended the year with a total net position, the very bottom line, of just under $23 million. You can see the bulk of that in your net position is actually made up of your capital assets, net of any related debt. So that's almost $19 million, as well as you have another $3.5 million in your trust funds for endowments that are either expendable or non-expendable. So your remaining two balances, your other purpose, restricted for other purposes, and your unrestricted. The restriction represents your library funds, which follow under a separate state law as far as what the purpose of those funds can be used for. And then you have unrestricted of the $450,000. The total net position was actually a decrease from the year before of $950,000. That you can see on Exhibit 2, the total expenses were $10,500,000. If you have program revenues, which, as you can see, are charges for services or operating grants and contributions. Those usually are targeted towards a certain function of the town. And then you have general revenues, which the bulk of which, of course, is property taxes, and then some general grants and licensing fees. Moving on, Exhibit 3, this is your balance sheet for your governmental funds. So this is on a modified accrual basis, so it doesn't include long-term assets or debt, such as capital assets or your long-term debt or your other, like your pension liabilities, those other figures that are not funded annually, but they're just an ongoing liability. So you can see first column is general fund, and then your two major funds beyond that are your expendable trust fund and your permanent funds, which are also held by your trustees. The total fund balance for the general fund at the year end was $2,200,000. Of that, you can see that the bulk of that is unassigned. $2,165,000 is unassigned. Your other categories of fund balance for the general fund, you have non-spendable of just over $50,000. That represents prepaid items and tax-deeded property that's held for resale, neither of which are converted to a spendable format, a current resource, if you will. So you don't, tax-deeded property is not something that you can tangibly use to pay a bill unless it's sold. And then same with a prepaid item represents a bill that you've already paid that, and when your 2020 year started, it immediately became an expense to the town. Exhibits 4 and 6, just to educate a little bit on this, those are reconciliations between your two accounting bases. So the first two exhibits I went through, Exhibit 1 and 2, again, that's a full accrual. So your capital assets are on there, your long-term liabilities, your pension liability, your OPEB liability. Whereas on Exhibit 3 and 5, you just, like I said, you just have your essentially your budget with a couple adjustments. So Exhibit 5 just shows your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. You can see for the first column, the general fund, they had a net change in fund balance of positive $167,000. Revenues were greater than expenditures by about $346,000, and then your other financing sources, your transfers in, transfers out, and then there was some new capital leases. You can see that was a decrease of about $180,000. So your net change, as I said, was $167,000. You can also see the expendable trust fund went down a little bit, based off your expenditures, and whereas your permanent fund increased by just over $500,000, mostly because of your gains on investments. The second to last column, same as your other governmental funds. This is an aggregate column. The back of this report has exhibits that break down those non-major items that you can look at. Exhibit 3 has the same column. Again, the balance sheet for all your aggregate funds is in that other governmental fund category. And then the only other highlight I will end with is Exhibit 7, which this is your budgetary basis. So this is your general fund budget. This is slightly different from Exhibit 3 in that your tax revenues that are deferred on Exhibit 3 are not on Exhibit 7. So you can see the bottom line on Exhibit 7 shows an unassigned fund balance of almost $3 million, whereas on Exhibit 3 you were showing just over $2 million. Again, that difference is property taxes that are receivable at year end that after 60 days, so essentially March 1st of 2020, had not yet been collected and therefore had to be deferred in accordance with accounting principles. So when it comes to your budget, you're using that almost $3 million figure because you're deferring property taxes. However, with the way property is taxed and assessed, the town does have the ability to recoup that ultimately through tax deeded property if they had to. Other than abatements, that would be the only reason you would never collect on those receivables. The Exhibits 8 and 9 are private purpose trust funds. These are, again, held by the trustees of trust funds. So with the private purpose plus the permanent fund plus your expendable trust funds, those three combined would be what you would see in your trustees' reports. The notes are informational and provide additional detail on all the items that are in those balance sheet items. And then if you'll bear with me, I'm going to jump right to the end, or the last two examples, excuse me. Exhibit 18, I like to highlight. This is a very good breakdown of your change in your unassigned fund balance. It shows where you started the year. The town of Alton started the year of 2019 with unassigned fund balance of $2,881,000. The town voted to use $500,000 to, maintain the tax rate. You had a revenue surplus. You had actual revenue over your estimated revenues of $341,000, and you also had an unexpended balance of appropriations, just under $300,000. So combined, that brought you a budget surplus of $638,000. Adjusting your classifications of fund balance, you actually had an increase in your non-spendable of 36, and so when you classify fund balance, you're just taking it out of unassigned fund balance. So you can see this is how you get to your ending unassigned fund balance on your budgetary basis of just under $3 million. Last page is a management report that we always put in. Here's where I would identify any deficiencies that we had identified that either would be material or significant and warrant discussing with you. I'm pleased to say we didn't have any issues that we felt we needed to comment in your report, which is always a good thing. We're not the type of firm that tries to find something no matter what. If we find something that are inconsequential, but we have improvements for, say, bookkeeping or whatever, we kind of deal with the employees at the time and just say here's a way of capturing that activity a little or clearer. But anything material, we would certainly be putting in this letter. And again, happy to announce we didn't have any issues to report this year. So having said all that, probably very fast, I will answer any questions that anyone has.
Gentlemen, have any questions?
I'm just happy with the opening statement myself.
Mr. Holt.
I just had one concern that was on the last page,
Okay.
but he more or less answered it for me.
More or less answered. What was your concern originally?
Well, I didn't understand what it was all about.
Okay.
He explained it.
So overall, the state of Alton is very good.
Yes, your financial reports are accurately presenting where you stand, so definitely. And yeah, you have a healthy number.
Good.
Virgil.
I'm all set.
Well, sir, ladies, do you have any questions, concerns, or comments? Wow, you're getting off pretty easy tonight, sir.
I guess so.
I appreciate your report, and I appreciate you meeting with us tonight to go through a few of the numbers. As you know, we are not CPAs or anything like that, so it's nice to have you come in and explain this a little more in detail. We do
Sure.
appreciate it. We look forward to continue your services with us in the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I'll point out we are scheduled to come in at the end of March, and so hopefully I can present next year's in front of you. That'd be nice.
Well, thank you, sir. We hope to see you at the end of March.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job to the girls in the town hall.
And the selectmen.
And moving on, and all department heads. Moving on to number 2, Milfoil Committee 2021 contract, acologic. Do we have somebody from the Milfoil Committee? Do we have Kelly from Parks and Recs with us tonight on this, or no?
Kelly and David Gould, the chairman of the Milfoil Committee.
Who would like to give us the highlights? Mr. Gould or Kelly?
Hey, Mr. Gould.
Okay. You have Mr. Gould online. Unmute. You see these bids? We did not see the bids, no. Not that I'm aware of, correct?
Wayne and us that has to accept the bids.
Board in the middle of last year.
Well, it says they just accepted the bids February 4th, but I don't remember seeing any bids.
No, we didn't see any bids.
And we're the ones that gotta accept the bids. Eddie can't accept bids.
Well, maybe that's a conversation for Mr. Gould and Kelly.
Have them both online,
Okay.
so they're not on the meeting, so, if you haven't dialed star six, I will,
Kelly, Mr. Gould, could you dial *6 and that will unmute you? Hello? Kelly, Mr. Gould, are you there?
Times that works a little better.
Kelly or Mr. Gould, if you can hear me, could you dial *6 to unmute yourself? Anybody there?
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Gould. How are you tonight?
I'm doing just fine. Sorry it took a while there to unmute me here.
Okay, that's great. So, Mr. McDonald had a question. I'm going to let him ask you this question before we go too far into this. Mr. McDonald.
Don't see the bid packets in here, because it says you accepted bids, but
2 or 3-year contract.
I thought Kelly had submitted the bid packages and everything.
it says you unanimously voted to accept the bids, but we're the only ones that can accept them.
No, and to enter an agreement.
No.
Oh, we're in the second year. Oh, okay. Why are we going to a different company?
Because I think the other company went out of business, but he can explain it to you.
If the other company went out of business and we're getting a new company, then we should have these bids in front of us for us to re-accept the new bid.
So,
Did you understand that, Mr. Cole?
Yes, the company we had been using, we were in the second year of a 3-year contract. They went out of business, and we went out to bid, didn't get any, talked to some companies after the bid period and then got 2 bids, and those bid packages, I believe, were submitted. I was told that they had been submitted to you guys.
Yeah, they're right in here. Well, they're in my book.
Tonight they're submitted, yes.
But we should accept them back.
But there should have been a meeting when the bids were open and read aloud, usually by the town secretary, Mr. Jarvis, Stacy, Bailey, and Joanne or Laura take part in it at times up in town hall. And then
Okay,
then it's normally presented to the Board of Selectmen, who is the recommendation from the department to award the contract to.
Right. My understanding was that since no bids came in during the official bid period, and we contacted companies afterwards, that we were just supposed to submit our recommendation based on that.
Liz, you want to address that?
Yeah, and Bob, you were in on that email chain too. So it is a unique vendor service. It's not a common vendor service. And, no one would respond to them for the services. And if I remember correctly, back in the fall, I recommended that they put that all down in writing for the Board of Selectmen. And do you remember anything else, Bob, in that email chain?
And basically to, go on, and they did. And they came up with 3 other additional companies.
After they reached out to them or something?
Yep, they reached out to them, and this is what they came back with. What we got in front of us tonight, where only 2 came back. A third one did not respond, if I'm correct.
That is correct.
And the info is basically here tonight. Well, it's all here.
I saw in your note to us in the Milfoil Committee recommendation, it's a cost of $1,250 a day is consistent with the rate the town was paying A and B. How many days does that allow you with the funding you have, sir?
We have tentatively scheduled 3 weeks for this coming summer.
Is that 15 days or 21 days, sir?
That would be 15 days.
Is there any harvesting going on this year at all, or just the dash itself? Because you had 2 types, right? You had a spray, and then you had harvesting of some?
Right, and we won't know that until June, because the state does the annual survey in late May or June, and that's when they get back to us and say, here are the areas that need treatment, and here's the treatment we recommend.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Gould, this, the proposal here, this is to finish out the remaining year of the original contract, is that correct?
No, this would be a brand-new contract.
All right, thank you.
And we set it up at the recommendation of the state where it's a 3-year contract, but it's basically a 1-year pilot program. If we, meaning the town of Alton and the state, are happy with the work, then it will go on to year 2 and 3 at the same price.
So they're charging you a $100 setup fee? Is that the way I read your contract?
Yes.
As a business person, I find that unusual. But maybe that's their policy. I just can't see a company charging a one-time setup fee of $100 and you're going to pay them $1,200 a day to do work with.
Well, I know, like, we get mobilization when we move the cranes.
Well, I understand that, but
Yeah. But they spell it right out in the contract.
I understand that. I just don't agree with it. Administrative costs that should be borne with the $1,250. But that's my opinion. Gentlemen, how say you? Do I have a motion to approve the acrologic contract for services for a pilot program for the year 2021, which can be extended for 3 years if the Milfoil Committee is satisfied with their work? I think I have that right. Correct, Mr. Gould?
That is correct. It would be a 3-year contract, but it's the year 2 and 3 are contingent upon successfully completing year 1.
You looking for a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I move we approve acrologic's contract as presented, pilot for 1 year, and if, with a condition of two more years, if the town is happy.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Holt to approve the acrologic contract for services, first year being a pilot program, contingent that it could be a 3-year contract upon the first year being satisfactory to the town of Alton and Milfoil Committee. Second by Mr. Whitman. Any discussion? I'll poll the board. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Wentworth, yes. Vote is affirmative. Mr. Gould, thank you. Kelly, thank you.
You're welcome.
Milfoil Committee Special Permit Application, Solitude. But stay right with us. Anybody have any questions on the scope of services? The special permit.
We're not gonna be doing this 4th of July again, right? Shutting down all the swimming areas?
Mr. Gould, did you hear Mr. McDonald's question?
I did, and just like last year, if it's around that time, we ask them to stay away from the 4th of July, which they did last year.
Okay, just so we're not shutting it down in the holiday.
I understand. Understand.
Motion to approve the special permit application, Solitude.
Motion, we approve the special application.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. McDonald to approve the special permit application, Solitude. Second by Mr. Whitman. Discussion. Mr. Holt, you have anything to say on this where you're part of this committee, or
What's that?
do you have anything to add to this where you're part of this committee? Okay. No discussion. I'll poll the board. Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Wentworth, yes. Votes in the affirmative. Thank you two again. Have a great night, and let's hope to a prosperous harvesting or dash program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Fire Department Vaccination Distribution Assistance. I'm sure we have the police chief online for this.
Fire chief.
The fire chief, excuse me. Night, chief. You there tonight?
Hello, good evening.
How are you, sir?
All wonderful.
That's good to hear.
So, as you know, the state has been trying to ramp up the availability of vaccines to get the 1B group through so they can move forward to the group 2. With that, they have doubled they've doubled their efforts. They've doubled the time that the vaccination clinics are going to be open, but now they're looking for help with vaccinators. So when we did our own clinic, we have 6 people in-house that are trained to give the vaccines. And basically what we're looking for is to allow them, they'd be able to schedule themselves through Department of Health and Human Services, basically doing it as a detail rate similar to police details. And then there would be an extra $10 given to the town for administrative fees. This is a contract, so it needs to go through you guys, and the contract will go through, they're looking to make it go through the end of September.
Chief, have you looked at the police detail contract for the administrative costs?
I have not seen that.
It's almost double the 10. It's a little over $20 for the, and can we set up a clinic right at the fire station and vaccinate our own residents?
Not at this time. This is all through the state. I don't have any control over that. I am trying to work with the state on getting our homebound residents done in their house and working on a mobile clinic for that, which that I might be able to do with help from the Public Health Network. But as far as opening up our own public clinic, the state's they're just not allowing that. They're using their fixed sites, and that's really so they can do it through their scheduling system. We can increase administrative fees by another $10 as well. That's completely up to you.
So these people would be going to the state sites?
Yep.
And who pays for that? Transportation.
New Hampshire.
DHHS.
$5 an hour is. The Department of Health and Human Services will be paying that.
So we would pay initially and get reimbursed by Department of Health and Human Services through the contract.
Who set up the 45 an hour?
Yeah.
Is that us or them?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Who set up the 45 an hour? Was that us or them?
That was us, and that can be adjusted. So basically, it can be adjusted anywhere within $65 an hour between administrative fees and personnel fees.
65 an hour.
It can be adjusted to that, yes.
That's the
I
most
just
they'll
want to
pay.
make sure that the town gets the same rate as we do with the detail down there, because I know, probably 5 years ago, we had to redo the one down there because it was costing us money to send them out on detail. And I want to make sure that we're covered still, that it's not costing the townspeople money to have them do private detail.
So I think the difference between the police and the fire, DHS is coming to us saying, we want to use some of your firemen to distribute vaccines. Where the police detail is something that the town of Alton built up as a regular ordinance. This isn't our ordinance. This is the state of New Hampshire coming to say they need help to distribute the vaccine. They're willing to pay up to $65 an hour. So we really don't have a say. It's either we accept up to $65 an hour or we don't do it all. Am I correct with that, Chief?
Yes. The other thing is there is no money going into retirement in benefits, because this is just it's its own thing and it doesn't affect anybody's full time.
Social Security and stuff be pulled out of this though?
That would be a question for the finance manager. I believe so, but I'm not 100% sure.
It would be a response for matching Social Security. The $10 an hour extra wouldn't be able to match that, correct?
You asking me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry. It depends on how many hours the person would
But
work.
if we,
So my question to you, Chief, is there any reason why the state of New Hampshire just doesn't want to make them a part-time employee, the state of New Hampshire?
I think
Instead of
it's
having
a matter of how many they need throughout the state. They're doing this through almost every fire department right now.
yeah, but we can adjust, because he says we can adjust the 45 up to the 65. So we can adjust this. But I think it's like $23 or something that we take, that covers the town. So if we have to adjust to 45, we should do that, because it shouldn't cost the taxpayers money. And
I agree with
realize
that.
it's another day, and I realize that. But it shouldn't cost the people in the town of Alton money to send people out to go to work and making $40, $50 an hour, and it's costing the taxpayers on the other end. No way, we can adjust this to make it cover the town costs, so everybody's even.
Do I understand this right? The state's gonna pay $55 an hour.
Up to, what did you say, 60, 65?
Oh, they said $55 an
Right
hour.
now, this one says 55. We can adjust it up to 65, correct, Chief?
Correct.
So if you
The
want,
state will pay us 65.
we can go up to $65 max. The chief went to $55 because he felt that was adequate. Is that correct, Chief?
Yes. But we
Okay, so that-
adjust that as needed.
Then we pay the employee $45 an hour.
Mhm.
Okay, so that leaves 10 when it's 5.
10 for the town to cover stuff.
Administrative costs.
Okay, administrative costs. Now that employee has to get to the job.
Chief, how do your employees how do the firemen get to the job? Take a town vehicle or their own personal vehicle?
Nope, this is their own personal, and they don't start on the job until they get there.
I have a question for you, because you just said that $10, we're not taking social security and stuff out of that. Social security comes out of what they're making an hour.
But as an employee, you have to match it.
The employer
And
matches.
then that,
How about workman's comp and stuff?
Workman's comp, it says right in the letter, we are responsible for workman's comp and insurance.
so this has gotta go like the police
Yep.
detail funding.
Yeah.
The
Because,
only thing you don't have in here is the use of a vehicle.
right, right, but I think that it has to be set up, because I know when we figured it out the last time on the detail funding for the police, it was costing the town money to send them out. So we readjusted everything, so the town didn't make money on it, but it pays everything.
Yeah.
We break even.
Yep.
So I think if we take the detail fund, even work with that we know that that's what we gotta have for the town to break even, and set it up that way.
Well, you can only go to 65.
Right, but we're not sending out the vehicles and stuff. But I mean, I think we gotta have enough that covers for workman's comp, for everything. In case one gets hurt, I mean, you gotta have them all covered anyways. But I think we've gotta figure out what it's gonna cost the town.
So the insurance carriers have all been contacted by the state, and all the insurance carriers are continuing the coverage for all of the employees while they're doing this. It's under the umbrella. There's no additional charge.
No,
It's
but
just-
we're still paying their insurance, and they're not working here in town, they're out elsewhere.
Right.
So we still gotta have some type of coverage that townspeople shouldn't pay me to go to work in
But
New York.
there's no change in the dollar amount that we pay. There's no additional amount added to that for this kind of function.
We pay to cover them here, working for us, not working in Laconia or Rochester. So you've gotta take a little bit out of that fund to say, yes, we have to cover this portion.
There's no additional increase in that.
I realize it.
No, what he's saying though is if they're not working in town, ambulance, or at a fire here in town getting paid through the town fund, we're gonna go to Wolfboro, say if that's where the state site is. They'll be working in another community, we're paying for their workman's comp and everything else, where he feels this should be coming out of the $65 or $55.
But what I'm saying is there's not.
But he's saying he's not.
We're paying for them.
He's not doing it on the town of Alton's property is what he is concerned about. They're doing it on somebody else's property. And if you didn't have, wait a minute now, if you didn't have this, we wouldn't have to worry about this.
So,
He feels that this is an added cost.
and it's
And
not.
what you're saying to me,
It's not.
what you're trying, and I understand what you're saying, whether they work 20 hours at a fire in Alton or 20 hours there, it's still gonna be the same amount of money.
I mean, they're still covered when they're working in the ambulance, going to the different hospitals in other cities, you know, so there's no additional cost to that either.
Also working for the town of Alton. They're out on private detail.
So what my question was
Why wouldn't-
Jim, isn't
Yes.
this like 4 hours at a time or something to not such a hefty thing for, taxes and stuff?
They're doing, basically, they can
Yeah.
schedule it however they need, but it can go 4-hour blocks up to 12 hours a day.
Okay.
And that depends on need and availability.
Okay, thank you.
Who signs off for the time, Jim?
As far as they have to schedule, they have a scheduling thing the state uses. They have a program for that. And that should come out with a, not a time card, but a time reference. And then they would put a time card in specifically for the detail.
Let me ask you this. They're not gonna, because this is a little bit more money than what they make down at the ambulance. Are they gonna skip their shift and say, I'm gonna work for the state, and then we're gonna be screwed up on the ambulance?
No, we're gonna cover the town first.
Okay.
We're first.
I calculate it's about $3.50 an hour that you pay in like Social Security and Medicare for one.
Your time in there, for doing the books?
So if it's $55 an hour that we're gonna receive for 1 hour, that $10 will cover the $3.50. Yep.
Cover her time doing the books? Yeah. And that's why we redid the police department one, because taxpayers shouldn't be paying anything when they're out on private detail.
So do you want it at $65 an hour? That's gonna give you $20.
It doesn't matter, just the 40 or whatever, but have it, if you're sending them out on private detail, then it should be almost even, Steven on it. I know we're not sending a vehicle, but we should see what it costs the town on private detail, because I know Russ figured it right down to the T. And that's what we had to adjust to, so we break even. And I think it should match, if we're gonna send them out on private detail, it should match the private detail down there.
I actually think this is more than the police, because the police has the cruiser part and added into it too, so.
I know, but we did just the administrative cost. I think it was like $23 or something.
Still, it wasn't enough for the town what they're getting for a cruiser running all day in the fuel.
Well, right.
I still don't think it's enough, but anyways, that's not police right now. We're here at this point. So you want to go to the max at the 65, that gives you $20 above what a firefighter would be paid to pay for your expenses. That would be more than adequate.
Oh, should be.
Yeah.
Any extra, you're gonna give it back to the state?
Well, I don't think we should make money off it. It'd be nice to
So
be.
once Laura figures out what the total cost is for administrative costs and everything else,
In your time.
that's what I just said, administrative costs.
If we figure out the bottom line, and if we're safe at $55 an hour,
Then that's fine.
I'm happy. I'm not trying to make money here. I don't think we should be trying to make money with this type of a situation.
Recommendation.
No, but I think we should we should at least break even, that it's not costing the taxpayers.
I think we will at the 55-45.
Okay?
So I have a motion to approve the contract
Well,
with the state of New Hampshire DHHS for $55 an hour.
no, I will make a motion to allow the chief to get with Liz and Laura to figure out administrative cost and adjust this up to the $65 an hour. So the town breaks even, it doesn't cost the town money to do it.
Jim, how much time do you have on this?
How much, as far as,
Coming back to the board or not?
they were looking for us to start 2 weeks ago.
Well, that's why I was making the motion.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, but you could do it tomorrow. That's why I'm making the motion that he.
You're
gets
saying
together
a contingent motion.
Right.
Okay.
He gets together with you and you guys are able to say, okay, this is administrative cost, okay, go.
If you need $57
Then you
an hour,
adjust.
then go ahead and go.
Yeah.
He's giving you the approval to go ahead and go, just make sure you cover your costs.
Right,
Whatever it takes to break even. Yeah.
Yep.
right.
All right, is that your motion?
Yes, that's my motion, because I trust the town. So,
The only thing I would ask if you can add for the town administrator to be able to sign on your behalf, along with myself.
yes, and to allow the town administrator to sign for the Board of Selectmen to allow the fire department to get this going for the epidemic, whatever it is.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Virgil McDonald to approve the request of the fire chief for DHS to pay our members the detail rate per hour and paying the town what they need to cover administrative costs and allow the town administrator to sign on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. Second by Mr. Holt. Does that sound the way you'd like to have your motion read? Second by Mr. Holt. Any discussion? Being none, Mr. Holt.
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mr. Wentworth, yes. Vote is in the affirmative.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Alton Housing for the Elderly, annual pilot agreement.
Now,
Remember, gentlemen, every year we get this before us, in lieu of taxes, the
but I have a,
government is willing to pay us a certain amount of money while investors make money off the elderly.
but I have a problem with this too, because it's not just the elderly housing.
That's true, it's not.
Low-income housing.
Right.
Yeah.
And they put it down in here as it's elderly housing, because that's what it was built for. Elderly housing and Section 8 are both in the same categories.
I think you bring this up every year, if I remember correctly.
I do.
I don't think I remember hearing it last year, but the year before that I did. I think he skipped last year.
I think because of federal funding, they had to allow for some Section 8 units to be rented, or units to be rented as Section 8. That's a requirement of
Most of
federal
them up there.
funding.
Gentlemen, do I have a motion to approve the agreement payment in lieu of taxes pursuant to RSA 72:23-K for the Alton Housing for the Elderly?
Is it possible to get the, paperwork from these people on what their administrative costs and everything else is?
I don't know, but I could certainly,
Well, I would think,
I mean, I don't have a problem if it's what do you call it,
I can see if that,
nonprofit or something, then
there should be no reason because it is run by a state agency over in Concord.
isn't it CAP? Isn't it?
It's part of the CAP program, yes.
I don't have a problem agreeing with it this year to get it done, but I'd like to see some paperwork on it.
You want to see some paperwork exactly on what?
Expenses, income and expenses.
Okay. For this property?
Yes. Yeah, for the company, what their administrative cost is in the company. And
Well, wait a minute, do you want it for Alton, or do you want it for everything they include?
I would like it all, I'd like what they do, what they pay in this community,
Bruce Court.
and then the administrative cost for the company.
It's the same agency over in Concord takes care of the one over in Belmont, also the one in Chichester. Or Epping, I should say.
On public cooperation.
Gentlemen, do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion that we approve the taxes for the housing for the elderly incorporated.
Motion made by Mr. McDonald to approve the contract agreement in lieu of taxes for the Alton Elderly Housing Incorporated. Do I have a second? I'll second it for discussion.
Well, we've been passing it every year since I've been a selectman. But down the road, I would like to see some figures.
Any other discussion? I'll poll the board. Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Yes, vote to the affirmative. Old business, discipline, grievance, complaint, and appeal policy. Gentlemen, in your binder, and you've had it for a few weeks. I asked for this to be postponed, which we did. It gives you examples of the grievance policy. There's only, and Laura worked on this. This is also part of our regular personnel policy now. I do have to tell you though, step 2, I do not agree with. I believe step 3 should become step 2, and step 4 should become step 3. There should be no step 2.
Which you don't agree with, Mr. Chairman?
Step 2.
If he disagrees with it, he goes back to the same person. Is that the way I'm reading it?
Well, that's kind of usually what normally happens if you have a grievance. You agree first to the person who issued it, and then,
Step 1 kind of takes care of that though. Step 2,
Yeah.
I just, as somebody that owns a business in the private world and doesn't live in the world of government policies and municipalities, counties, state, federal, you come to work, if you have a bad attitude, you get spoken to. You straighten your attitude out, you get a verbal warning. If you have problems at home, you leave your problems at home.
That's right.
You have problems at work, you go home, you leave your problems at work. But I come in the world, if you can't get over the difference after step 1, maybe it's not in the place you need to work. I understand people have problems with their department heads or their bosses, but you get over it. Okay?
It's part of life.
Step 2, going down, and step 3, I can understand, I have no problems with. As far as having a public meeting for an employee to read the differences, I never agreed with that since I became a selectman because, like I said, you're an at-will state. You can be fired at any point in time. I feel if the department head and the employee cannot work it out, they should go to the top one that's here, the town administrator. Town administrator listens both sides. 9 times out of 10, I would say that they're going to agree with the department head because the department has certain policies in place the way they run their departments. But not always. Liz has informed me of this, that at times she had to side with the employee. I also feel if someone, it comes to a point that they're having to be suspended for work from a department head per se, not because of a police investigation, because sometimes that's state law that comes involved. But if the town administrator, the road agent, the Parks and Rec director says, you're suspended for 1 week because of everything that's been happening, I don't feel they should be suspended. They should be fired.
Well, if you issue them a written warning, then the next step is
A verbal and a written
warning.
no suspension. You're gone. If you come to a point in your job, you need to be suspended from your job.
Yep.
I agree.
Yeah, pretty well done.
As far as I'm concerned, you should be let go. But I don't know how you gentlemen feel about this. I've read through this, and Liz has got her pen up.
I agree with that.
just two quick things. Number 1 is step 1 is for the employee to grieve to their supervisor. There are some departments who have, hear me out, Virgil, different levels of discipline, like the police department, for instance. And that's if one of those mid-level supervisors issued the discipline, the employee, that's the way I'm reading this. And then the second thing is, I just lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me. I'll come back to it.
Can I elaborate on what she just said?
Yes, ma'am.
So what I was thinking is that I read this a couple weeks ago when we were supposed to meet, and with your discussion on maybe having a public works director, I'm thinking you might have more supervisory that wouldn't run to the public works director in your different departments in the future.
Okay, I remember. You have to be careful about treating municipal government employees like private sector
No, ma'am.
employees, because there are some additional protections for municipal employees in the state law.
If you're getting suspended or sent home,
I'm not saying
I know, but if-
light with them. I'm not saying that.
no, but if you're getting suspended because you're screwing up, and it's
Yeah.
that bad that you're getting suspended for a week,
Yeah.
you ought to be fired if it's that bad.
I understand where you're coming from. That's why I made my comment about the luxury and lifestyle of working for government agencies such as municipality, county, state. or teachers. Everybody's protected in the government sector. Nobody's protected in the private sector.
Right.
We're the ones that foot the bills, the ones in the private sector.
Thank God.
Yes, the town employees, county employees, state employees, but no, they pay taxes, but they're protected. I mean, we'll take Washington, for example. Everyone's talking about a $15 minimum wage. What did this president do when he goes in? We're only going to do it for federal workers. Didn't say anything else about the poor schmucks out there in the ditches working. So that aggravates me because federal employees get it, but nobody else is worth it.
Well,
So when I go through these policies like this, I do get aggravated. My folks know when they come to work, come in with a positive attitude. You having a bad day, you got something going on at home, fine, I'll sit down and listen with you. But we got to straighten it out so it doesn't affect the rest of the crew and it doesn't affect the customers coming through the door.
because it will affect the crew.
You come in sloppy appearance, you're working 3 jobs or 2 jobs because you want to make extra money, but you're starting to deteriorate your performance at my place of work, we'll sit down and talk about it. If things don't change, I give you that verbal warning, I got a written warning. After the written warning, then we're done. This one here, we have 4 processes.
So you're saying to get rid of step 2 or step 1?
Step 2.
So that would be bypassing the department head if you did that, though.
They already had a discussion with the department head on step 1.
Step 1, they would.
No, it was with the immediate supervisor that issued the discipline.
That's the department head.
No, not necessarily, not in all departments.
Why
Employee puts their formal grievance in writing and provides it to the supervisor who issued the discipline.
Right.
So like she was saying.
Step 2, if the employee is not satisfied with the outcome of step 1, the employee puts the formal grievance in writing to the department head.
Why can't we put it?
So basically, Laura's saying at this point, this would be for Public Works Director primarily only, because,
The police have already.
But why?
Supervisors before Ryan.
So does the fire department, actually.
Why can't the grievances go right to?
too many supervisors.
Why can't the grievances go right to the department head?
Well, that would be, and you can, if you want to do that, you just eliminate step 1. And the employee would start with step 2 by writing the grievance letter to the department head. But, I think it's up to you. Laura, do you have anything to say on that?
No, if you do the whole umbrella of your public works theory for even in the future, you wanted different departments to be under your public works. So say you have 5 different departments under that one umbrella, every grievance would go to that public works director.
He'll hold
Well,
order.
let me put it this way. If the highway foreman, if we go to that point down the road, has a problem with one of the guys working in the shop. I'm the foreman, you're the truck driver. Virgil, come on, we're gonna go see the public works director, we're gonna work this out now and get it done. We go in, we set out public works director.
It's over.
That's your verbal warning right there. This is the problem I'm having with Virgil McDonald, truck driver, 10-wheeler, truck number, blah, blah, blah. This is what I found him doing. This is his verbal warning. Public Works Director sits there and says, okay, that's your verbal warning, Mr. McDonald.
So I think most employees would start out at step 2 in this. Because we only have a couple of departments right now that have other supervisors that do have the ability to issue discipline if they had to.
Last time I knew, the police department normally had mostly their own personal policy down there, didn't they?
Yeah, they have their own SOPs, yeah.
Yes. And
But I think.
So this shouldn't even come in consideration with employees.
Well,
It's the police department.
not necessarily, because SOPs are for standard operating procedures. And they do get this booklet. Every employee down there gets this booklet. And they're not unionized, so it wouldn't be a separate union contract, which would have to have stuff like this in it.
Because everybody gets 5 days, so by the time you get through this whole process, you're talking a month to a month and a half. We just went through that. Then we actually went into 6 months.
Yep.
It seems to me,
I just think it's too elaborate, and I'd like to see it condensed myself.
I think if change the wording of step one. It goes to the department head, then we can scrap step two. That's what I think.
Well, I throw mine out. Liz is throwing hers out. Laura showed where she put it. Take one more week to think about this, because it is a big step.
It is, yeah.
Changing
Oh, Paul?
And it's something that's going to, so you've heard my explanations, you heard Laura's, you heard Liz's, heard yours.
I got one more. On the complaint procedure, I do not think that if an employee's got a complaint about another employee, he should not be going and confronting the other employee. That is not good business. If he's got a complaint about another employee that's unsafe or doing something, he should be going to the supervisor or the department head, not confronting the employee on it. I think we're asking for trouble there.
The second paragraph, when an employee feels compelled to file a complaint, the employee may try to resolve the issue informally with the person involved.
May means they may or may not.
I know, but that's just not a good,
But sometimes I know in a particular department that will go unnameless, one employee will talk to the other employee, pull them aside and say, hey, what's going on? You know, you gotta, pay more attention or, whatever.
and that's normal.
Yeah. Well, that's what this says.
Talking, when you're filing a complaint against an employee, you shouldn't be over there
Right,
confronting the employee.
right. When you're gonna do a formal complaint.
Yeah, because you've already started the bad feelings.
Well,
I mean, it's different when you're working with them. They're gonna talk and say, hey, that don't look too safe, let's fix it.
I mean, this whole complaint procedure could be removed or reworded.
Yeah, I think it should be added into the others, that if you got a complaint, write it down and pass it into the department head.
And then also, just the last part of it, if anybody has to be suspended, I still feel put on leave, you should not be paid for it while
Oh,
the
absolutely not.
investigation is being done. Because if you were cleared at the end of the investigation, you would have your pay retroactive back to when you were put on. Too many times I've watched our community, I've watched other communities put somebody on leave, and at the end of the leave, say 6 months or whatever the investigation takes, they're found to be in the wrong. The employee walks off with all this.
All that money.
For doing nothing. We had a police officer here that happened to about 10 years ago down in New Durham that was worked for us. And there was an investigation going on, and at the end of the investigation, it was found that he should be terminated, and he got paid for almost 6 months.
I remember we did it when we suspended the chief down there.
You shouldn't be, not in open session.
So anyways, but take another week, look at it, guys. At least that's the way I feel we should, because Mr. Rochelle is not here. Maybe he's at home, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because he might have something on it too.
And how about, based on what you all have said tonight about page 4, the complaint procedure, that Laura and I sit down and see if we can revamp that somehow into a more simplified version?
Shorten it up too.
Yeah.
Shrink all these up. Can we shrink all these up? Not the word, not the lettering now. The sentences.
So it's just not a small font?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I will tell you this. You read the planning board minutes, and it's a little bit bigger than this. You read the selectmen's minutes.
Oh.
And, Royce, you're gonna have 4 pairs of glasses.
Oh.
Yes, my son? Yeah. All right, well, so we'll table this off till next week.
Yeah.
Number 2 then, default budget, Mr. Holt.
Yes, I believe at our last meeting, I brought it up, and we were going to get a town attorney's opinion, whatever. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, he had a few questions at the end of last week, and he is working on it, and it'll be forthcoming.
Does not have an answer for you this week then.
Okay, will that be under old business for next week?
It'll either be underneath old business next week, or I'll have the town administrator put underneath the TA's report.
If she gets,
If she gets a response back from the town attorney.
Yeah, because the night of deliberative, I quite frankly couldn't hear what Jim did say about the subject that night.
He didn't really answer the subject that night.
Didn't miss anything.
Because he did not have anything in writing that was given to him to specifics. And it's like I stated 2 weeks ago, all of this is submitted to the DRA in advance. They go through the whole budget. They see what has been carried over, and Laura puts it down on that page, what has been carried over, the contracts pursuing. They have never kicked it back. So also look at it, the DRAs are kicking it back, we're not doing anything illegal. But yet, the town attorney has been notified, the questions, and hopefully he'll be able to get back to us next week.
Are we putting the same pages we send to DRA in those, the yearly reports, the books?
The annual report,
Yeah.
the town
Are
report?
those the same as what we're sending DRA printed in those books?
Yeah, there's the MS forms are
Yeah,
usually.
same.
Yeah, yeah.
You can only have one NMS form. Like,
Yeah, I just
only-
didn't know if we leave them blanked out
No,
and then send DRA a different form, that they're the same.
So let's see what Jim has to say.
yeah, and also, just so you know, he's at town meeting for procedural guidance and answering procedural questions, not legal, opinions on things that are popped right out of the blue, so to say.
Kind of like us being called deers, the headlight on us. I do not answer someone's question repeatedly right off as soon as they ask it. I think about it so it doesn't get turned around or twisted. And unfortunately, some folks, if you don't jump right on as soon as they're done talking what the answer should be, they feel like we don't know what we're doing. And that's not the reason why I waited. I listen what others have to say and make sure it's what, I know what I'm going to say that I feel is correct and not misleading. And unfortunately, some people think we're deer standing there looking at headlights. Okay, default budget, we'll move off from that one. Number 3, Bay Hill, Mr. Holt.
Yes, we discussed this last week, Paul brought it up. And, I think we're gonna try and see, according to the minutes, if we could get contact Google about possibly doing something that way.
Yes, I asked Josh tonight. He does have a request into Google.
You do, good. And also, could we get a report on accidents out there like this winter?
On Bay Hill?
Yeah.
On Bay Hill.
Because I was told tonight by a citizen that there were 7 accidents already this winter on Bay Hill.
We had one earlier in the week. We had one tonight. The one tonight, Mr. Rochelle did reach out to me and text me that it was GPS error.
It was?
It was.
Yeah.
That's what he told me tonight.
We put any signs up at the entrance?
We have not put a sign up yet.
That's coming at the next meeting. The police chief and the highway manager have, come back with a recommendation. You'll get it next meeting.
So we can get the report too about the accidents on Bay Hill Road.
Could I make a recommendation that, I've been thinking about it a lot, not just because I live there, because I don't have a problem with the road personally. I can handle it, but other people can't. And if signs don't do much, if you put a flashing, I was thinking about a flashing sign similar to a school entrance. You know how you drive down the road, when the light's flashing, the sign says speed limit 15 miles an hour, school zone. Same thing, same scenario. When the light's flashing, there's no through traffic. Similar, something similar to that. That's the problem, it's the through traffic. And the sign could be activated by the police department, or I don't know how they do it, but.
That's a question for the police chief next week. Can we meet with him? That or a sign with the flashlight says hazardous conditions exist.
No through traffic.
Well, you can put a caution sign up, flashing yellow, but flashing on means only caution. It's like when we come through the bay. It shows a yellow sign 25 miles per hour. Well, that's not it's not legal to stop anybody going over 25 because it's only a recommended. So a caution light only recommends.
Well, that's right, I understand it. But if there's a sign there saying no through traffic when the light's flashing, you know, I mean, come on, people, I mean, to make it 100%, you gotta put a gate up there with somebody standing there.
There's a job for you. You're retired, you can do that, dude?
Tobles.
Tobles. Be the gatekeeper.
Well, we're doing it now with the police cruisers, with an accident.
Grim Reaper.
I could call it
Okay.
Bob's Hill Road.
There you go.
Close the road, that'll take
Put
care
in
of
a
it.
total.
No, he'll start
Anything else
charging
in Bay
toll.
Hill then?
Tobles. Buck a cat.
Anything else in Bay Hill? All right, we'll move over to Selectmen's report. Mr. Holt,
Oh, well said.
Mr. Whitman.
I do have an explanation for everybody. I talked to all three of our state reps about the situation, about the school funding, and Mr. Howard gave me something for everybody to explain HR 3. Even got an introduction at the beginning. I just brought it for everybody's general knowledge because we left it last week that we should talk to our state reps about it. So Mr. Howard provided this for us. So it's on the record.
Thank you. I heard from two of the state reps.
You've talked to the reps. What's the other ones say about it?
It's basically about Claremont, that the courts, like in the Claremont decision, had no right. It's an unconstitutional decision they made, basically is what it's about. And I'm sure that there are factions in the State House that want to go back to the way the Claremont decision said we had to take care of the schools. The current makeup, you wouldn't think that they want to go back, but there are a number of people in the prevailing party that usually vote with the other party. So it's a close situation in Concord right now. The majority doesn't have that much of a majority.
Right.
Well, the original formula that we had in the state worked pretty well. Unfortunately, some towns felt it was unfair until the court decided that in the Constitution where it said the word cherish, yet everybody had the equal opportunity across the board for the same education state of New Hampshire. And I think, remember right, that's what the judge used in his ruling coming down. The children shall cherish. And they determined that would be every child in the state has the right to the same education as another child in another town. Unfortunately, Alton does not have that some of those poorer communities have, because we never did a vote tech in this. But, okay, we have to send our kids out of school. So I don't know where it all stops or stands. I think it's very unfair, especially if they try to hit all more money. Because all they're trying to do is to drive this town down, putting us up with the same tax rate as some of the other communities.
But what gets me is they want this account to be held by the state and only interest spent. So the state holds all the money and distributes the interest while still holding all that cash, which I think is wrong.
The state has proven in the fact that they can't control.
They want to make everybody the same.
They account to pay for the retirement.
They want to make every town the same financially.
Well, Phil, thank you for this. I appreciate it.
Yep.
It is part of the record you gave to Liz. Mr. McDonald.
The Conservation Board suggested that we leave any trees that are not a hazard to navigation in the river, because it helps feed the fish and stuff and helps with spawning and everything.
Yeah, I read the letter. Yep. I quite agree with it. That's all right.
Well,
The reason I don't agree with it in the river, there's plenty, all the bushes all around there that they can get in through different channels to hide. Plus the swamp area down by the river that comes up by where the well pump is and the railroad trusses, there's avenues in through there where they can go in and spawn. A few trees there, I don't feel, we talked about phosphorus levels going into the river and everything. The breakdown of trees and everything adds to the phosphorus levels of that river going into the bay. So the less with trees and decomposition that we have breaking down in the water is better for our waterways.
You also have another issue.
Like that whole road, that letter S that goes all along there. There's not much vegetation on that whole side retaining the dirt, the silt, and everything going into the river. It's always been one of my things, even when I ran back in the 90s. Why don't we fix that road up? Because that road goes into the river, to our reservoir, which is underneath in the aquifer, goes out to Lake Winnipesaukee, and that's the only thing that gives us in this community, what we have in this community is Lake Winnipesaukee. It brings the tourism in, helps local businesses, it helps our tax rates. If we lose that, we lose what we have in this community. And I just feel leaving trees in that river to decompose, to add more phosphorus levels to the bottom of that river and Lake Winnipesaukee is wrong.
Yeah, because we'd be getting too close to Winnipesaukee, too close to it.
I mean, if they're live trees, I have no problem, but dead trees just laying there decomposing, that's just adding more phosphorus levels to the lake.
And another issue, Mr. Chairman, is when you have trees fall into the river, it can change the course of the river, which can cause washout problems.
So when we rehab a brook, we put trees in them. When you rehab a river or brook for the
And
issue.
they've had problems doing that, Virgil. I can give you an example of one up in Colebrook. They did that. They put the stumps in reversed, and this was supposed to be the big ecological miracle. They had to pull them out because the following year, when springtime came with the annual snowfall and the rain, the rivers increased flow. They had some serious washout problems. It impacted private property, changed the actual course of the river in certain sections. So you can get in trouble with that.
Maybe they weren't put in right.
Well, engineered.
And we're talking new trees there, but I agree with Reuben about the decomposition of the trees in the water.
That's not good either.
But let's go with the recommendation, Conservation Commission, see how it lets it go, but if phosphorus levels are coming up, that's a part of it, that's all. Gentlemen, on my report, is there anything else on Zoll? Anything else, sir?
Nope, no, sir.
It was asked to me if the selectmen had considered about going back to meeting every 2 weeks. With that being said, I would consider it. Also, I would hope that the emergency management team by the 1st of April will allow us to have in-person meetings again to a limited amount. Numbers are down in town finally.
Looks good.
From post-holiday season, and it's across the state, they're all down from post-holiday season. They're cut in half this month compared to the same time last month in January, but there was a lot of things in January. There was the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. I'm hoping by April, we can have some folks back in our audience. I'm hoping. I'm not going to say I want it. I'd like to see it before the summer season starts, only that we can get some local residents in here to let us know how they feel about everything going on before the summer crowd comes up, and we're fully inundated. Hopefully by then more people will be vaccinated that want to get vaccinated. But it's one of those two things, I think, that are coming. Before we know it, March 1st is here next week. April 1st becoming fishing season. We're going to be opening up the public restrooms again. That's another thing we need to plan on coming up. It's only going to be 38 days away. If the weather breaks come April, we're going to be inundated again from folks from the city because they're going to want to be getting out of the city coming up. So I think we need to sit down and have a meeting with the police chief, the emergency management director, to see what their plans are for this upcoming spring. We're not that far away. The question was asked, have we considered it going back to every 2 weeks? And I said, no, we haven't, but I thought I'd bring it up in my report tonight. I'd like to have you gentlemen think about it over the week and see what you think next week.
I ask a question too. Are we gonna do water at one of our meetings for passing?
We have a public, we have a public hearing coming up on the changes of the water department policies. Courtney is supposed to get you all a new packet on that because we were supposed to do it last February, what the changes would be. I did ask Courtney last week to get us everything, all the changes again, because this was done a year ago, and and Mr. Holt wasn't here when it was gonna be done in February. He hadn't been elected yet. Plus two is, I don't think you can go back in your files and find those changes, nor could Phil, nor could Paul, nor could I. So I asked for a packet updated of what all those were, to be brought before all the selectmen for that public hearing. Because I'm sure you're gonna tell us those dates anyways, for that
Yeah,
and road acceptance.
It's in a couple of weeks, for the water use ordinance. It's a full replacement of the current ordinance. And you'll have it in your binders.
Because in 3 weeks, gentlemen, you could have a new chairman, and Ms. Whitman could be joining us, or somebody else could. So give that some thought over the week, if you'd like to go back to every 2 weeks. Also about the booklets, hopefully you can remind Courtney of that matter, of the updates, water users policies.
Well, water use policy past due.
Yeah, and then we have Hopewell Road coming up, not Hopewell, public hearing on the road acceptance for,
Up on the mountain. For Brad Jones.
I believe Mary gave me the
yeah.
date on that the other day, and I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, that's coming up in a couple of weeks too.
Everything's coming up in a couple of weeks. Mr. Roberts will be retiring. Will be getting done in a couple of weeks, not retiring until April, but he is taking some time off before he does retire. So we have a busy month coming up. Okay, that's all I have. I'll turn it over to the town administrator.
So it was me who, asked Ruben right before the meeting if there had been any thought about switching to every other week. Not to put a monkey wrench into anything, I was just kind of curious about it. Just to let you know.
Everybody, and it's not just for you, though, but it's also for Josh. He's here Monday night with us. He's here on every meeting, basically. Laura's been here when we do the finances, and she's gonna be here more as we go through the personnel.
Plus, the agendas aren't real.
But I don't want to be sitting here till 10 o'clock at night, though, either.
Right. No, I agree.
I'm sorry, I'll turn it back over.
No, that's okay, that's all right. So I just have, 3 things under TA report. And, the first one has to do with the coalition communities, the, document that Phil just handed out. I've been forwarding you emails from the president of that committee.
It's like watching water boil.
So I, wanted to know if you had any thought on participating with the group to hire a lobbyist. Do you want to wait?
Doesn't sound like New Hampshire Municipal Association lobbying for us, because they also represent the towns that want them.
Yeah.
Yeah, oxymoron there, but, I would like at some point in time, to be honest with you, to see what benefit we get out, the pros and cons of the New Hampshire Municipal Association. For the dues we pay, can we outweigh the pros and cons? And I know everybody can tell me, oh, this is all the pros, but there's gotta be some downside. One of this is the downside of it. Because they won't lobby for us as a donor town.
That's what worries me.
Against Claremont or Laconia or Rochester. I mean, take Rochester, for example. That was brought up.
I think that's on the list.
That was brought up. They got industrial parks. They have all the businesses down there, but yet they're still considered a poor community because of all the apartment houses and low-income housing. So is that what Alton should do, is put in low-income housing, then we'll become a recipient? But I mean, I look at Laconia, same thing, what they would receive. They have industrial parks. They also have lakeshore front property. And a lot of us on Winnipesaukee, the Winnipesaukee River, and Winnisquam, and Opeechee. But and they have
3 times our population.
they're considering them, comparing them with Claremont, and I'm sitting there saying, there's a big difference there, you know? But anyways, I'll get off my high horse on that. But I don't mind paying for lobbyists if we feel there's a good possibility. But if it's just throwing money out the window and it doesn't come back to us.
But also, if the thing that Phil handed out, if this is gonna go through and pass, we wouldn't have to worry.
Until the next election, when the House turns or the Senate turns or governor's council turns.
All right, so I'll take that as a no decision at this time. Okay. And just so you know, if you do not, remain as a member with NHMA, it means that we can no longer purchase any of the insurances that we have through them or participate in any of the training.
Oh, I'm not saying to leave them.
Or their legal.
I want the pros and cons.
Okay.
Because they're not gonna lobby for you,
Well,
because they're afraid they'll offend the other half of the group.
Well, they represent two.
Stop giving them the
they represent anyone who's a member, they,
99% of your towns belong to them.
Yeah, yep.
yep.
But they can't
They're not,
take a side.
they're not a formal
Lobbyists,
lobbyist company.
Well, maybe if you.
The New Hampshire Municipal Association had their problems years ago, and that's one of the reasons they got out of that. That's one reason all left them from the insurance, between the firemen's insurance and stuff like that, if you remember a few years ago.
That was before my time.
Oh, yeah.
Before your time.
Yeah.
We're not that much age difference.
But maybe if they're gonna fight for something, maybe if they're gonna fight for something that a lot of towns are against, maybe we ought to ask the other towns to stop paying them, bring their budget down into reality and let them think then.
But anyway, okay. Go
Okay,
ahead, ma'am, I'm sorry.
that's all right. The second item has to do with tax deeded properties. You'll see an email I put at your desk titled TA report. So last year, or actually, this has been pending a long time. We had 2 properties from the 2019 auction that were rescinded on. So those are just sitting in limbo. We own them. And I think, I'm recommending that the board, approve or seriously think about having a remote auction with the auctioneering company that we use. I could have them attend remotely to answer any questions you have. The email explains it all, and you'll see attached, there's a document, which I got from the tax collector. The 2 properties in question are highlighted. And now that the bulk of 2020 has gone by, since the last auction, the 2 properties above the highlighted areas would also be eligible for auction.
What about the bottom ones?
The bottom ones, as you see from the notes from the assessor, that these are just oddities from.
Dr. Ray Olat,
Yeah.
that one doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah,
Mount Major Storage sits on that piece of property.
Oh, that was the old trailer.
That was the old trail that stuck down in the woods, and they removed it years ago. That's where that one came from.
But who bought that lot?
It wasn't a lot.
it wasn't a lot.
It was a trailer put on a piece of property, which is part of the Mount Major, which was Mr. Jones's property.
Right.
And it was just set there. Yeah. An old doctor he used to come up and stay there every summer, and it's just that nothing was ever done about the trailer. Finally, the trailer disappeared, and the town's been trying to collect taxes on the trailer. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, but the other thing, like the bear pond and stuff, the lots have still gotta be there, right?
Well, if you read the note from the assessor, it doesn't exist. And so one of them could have been a trailer on someone else's land or something. And then, so these, I'm not even,
But the lots exist. So the land is still there.
It says on the third one, Bear Pond Road, Northern Land Traders, note from assessor, should be map 12, lot 81. But the last time anybody went out there, they couldn't find it.
so it's kind of a weird thing. So, but what I'm talking to you about tonight is the 2 highlighted properties and the 2 right above it, Alton Shores Road. So if you're agreeable into moving forward with an auction, I could have the auctioneering company attend at a very near future and get your approval to move forward with having the remote auction.
Put it off until the fall.
Why?
So let this, up at this.
See if we can have the public back in, have it on public versus online.
Which
Right now, boy,
they will do it,
Or,
they will do an in-person auction, but it has to be outside.
I got no problem with that. They want to do it outside come the summer.
I just think we should hang on
But-
to the fall.
In order to do that, we need some time, so you guys will have questions, I'm sure, and a lot of prep work and planning and.
I have no problem having an auction this year as long as it's done in full public view. outside.
Just, and maybe with a rain date.
Have it right down at the bay, they can stand on the bandstand, have all the people out in the cars, boom.
Usually you don't get that many anyways.
Right.
Well, the last time we had one here, we had a big crowd.
Yeah, 2019.
But we had a lot of properties then, too.
Yeah.
But we could also put it in the auditorium where we just had the.
Auditorium at the school.
Or the parking lot.
Saturday morning.
Right.
If it's raining, put it right inside the auditorium or the parking lot.
Because in the summer, it's too crowded up in the bay to have,
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be great for the businesses, though, just think of the coffee and the food they'd sell.
yeah. So if you're somewhat interested in moving this thing along and having it sometime possibly during the summer or fall outside,
That'd be fabulous.
I can have them attend remotely. You can ask questions and we can get this thing going.
Let me ask you something. This is all the properties that we've had. Do we have another list coming in next year?
Every September, there's another,
Well, that's why I say maybe we should wait till fall and then just combine them. More properties, bigger crowd.
but wait a minute. When a property is tax deeded, we hold on to it for 3 years. So anything that's tax deeded this fall, we're not gonna put up for auction.
But in September, we're gonna have our 3 years, ain't we?
No, not on the new property that's gonna be tax deeded
No,
this coming
but we
September.
must have properties coming up that we have held for 3 years.
No,
This is the list. This is it.
This here, the closest one, Bay Hill.
This is it. These are the properties.
But that, up till date.
This top block here, all of the tax deeded properties that the town owns, period. Today, right now.
That's right.
This is it.
That's right.
But you
You're
look,
telling me we've got no more coming up in the following year?
The closest one's the 18, it's 2018.
we might,
Yeah, you gotta hold them for the 3 years.
Yeah.
right.
I realize that.
So,
We've got another list coming right up.
No.
What if you want to know if there's any other towns?
The other list will be new ones.
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, but you gotta wait 3 years.
This is all that the town is
this is
holding.
it, yeah.
Every year you get it.
This is it.
Okay.
If next year you take 2 more, it goes on top. You gotta
Right.
wait 3 years.
Look at the recording date column. That'll tell you. Count 3 years out from that, and then that's when it can be auctioned off.
No properties in 19.
I don't, well, actually, there was one, right, recording date, November 19th, 2019. And then there was one,
You have to wait another,
and there was one at
no, not 2 years.
In the fall.
No, you couldn't do 2019 in the fall. You couldn't do that until 22.
right.
Into 22, which should be the start of 24.
Okay, any other questions on this?
Gentlemen, what's your pleasure? Go ahead and move forward, have an auction this summer.
The summer outside or in the school.
Or at least talk to them
Yes.
remotely?
Can we get the properties themselves, the readouts?
You mean the,
What we're looking at,
you mean the property cards?
property cards, see if the Conservation Commission should be seeing these first, if anything should be held.
So, once you give the approval to have an auction, then I create a letter with copies of the property cards. I send it to the planning board and the Conservation Commission. That's required, by state law, RSA 80.
Well, I would like to do that before I would contact the auctioneers. I think that would be prudent to do that first, but we talk to the auctioneers.
Yeah, do the in-house work. And what would you do, the 4 properties?
That's what I'm recommending.
Yeah, that's what I'd recommend.
Those are the only 4 that could be.
I mean, I can't see where knowing where they are in the location, I can't see that the conservation and the planning board would be interested in them, because they're basically house lots,
Yeah.
Small ones at that.
small ones.
Yeah. Okay. All right, the next item is, you have in your binder, in the back, TA packet area, a letter from Atlantic Broadband. Our contract with them is expiring in a year-ish. And then you'll also see attached to that letter, there's an email. Actually, the email is from the town of Guilford. And they are inviting other municipalities who will be having a contract expired to participate in order to get a lower rate for everybody.
Well, I think so, and I think what we ought to put out there is our citizens of the community is to send in, how do I want to put it? Have an open dialogue with the Board of Selectmen of their concerns of the landing broadband.
You want that like an agenda item?
Well, not so much an agenda item as maybe even put it out in the paper that the town of Alton will be entering into a new contract with the landing broadband and franchise fees. Contract is available for review at the town of Alton or on the website. If you have any concerns of this company, please let the Board of Selectmen know in writing. You can email us at blah, 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 or submit it in writing. Because no matter where you go, no matter what company it is, everybody's got to complain about cable.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? For service, not meeting the customer's needs. If we're entertaining a contract with them, we should listen to our constituents to see what their concerns are and say to a landing broadband, say, these are the concerns. Now, if we're only getting 10 concerns, then we can't submit it. But if you get 1,000 concerns, then we should be submitting it. Because that's almost 25% of your base your people. Now, not every 25, not 100% have landing broadband. Some have TDS, some have satellite. I feel there's not enough competition in this area, because if there was, there'd be better rates. Yeah. But I just hear it all the time about all the companies. That internet service is terrible, this is bad, you know, the station's terrible, you wait for service, you're not getting service. So this is a form I feel that the town of Alton residents that have a landing broadband can reach out to us.
Pay big money to watch commercials.
And just say, do you have any concerns, or is this something you're looking at? I know it's a boilerplate contract that they do every year, but I think we should at least allow them to say, this is what we've been told.
Okay, well, we can take care of that on our end, yes.
Okay.
So you also have this document that was stapled it to the back of the letter.
Yep.
I got this from the finance office today. The highlighted areas are what we paid for when Atlantic Broadband bought out MetroCast in 2016. And because of that, if you Phil, I know you remember, and Virgil, you remember, we had to hire an attorney who specialized in those types of things. And the total that we spent was basically $6,500 for that. Now that's going it alone. So I don't know how much of a discount or a lower price it will be if we join with Guilford and these other communities that are joining with Guilford, with the same attorney, by the way, from the same law firm that Alton hired in 2016. It's a very good law firm and a very good attorney. So my question to you is, do you want to participate in that, in the group thing?
Well, how soon? Because I'm thinking about what Reuben said, and yeah, I would like to hear from the public on this.
Do we have an estimated
Well,
cost, what the cost would be, ma'am?
No.
All right.
I think it's kind of two separate issues. I mean, no matter what the cost is, whether you do it alone or you join a consortium of other municipalities, you can still receive input from the public of what their concerns are with the service and stuff.
And that's true. I mean, there's no way you can deny them because they already had their equipment up here. It's a contract, we're not have to do. It's whether how we present the contract to them to say, in the best interest of the community and its citizens. I have no problem with that, but also down the road, if we are going to also entertain Portsmouth, which I think in Portsmouth one, we were looking at about,
I think it was about 7,000. Now, I took the 120,000 and I divided it.
5,600.
Okay, by the 15 municipalities that had agreed to join that consortium. and came up with that, because the more municipalities that join, that price decreases for each municipality.
So 6,000 for Portsmouth, if we join with the group of Portsmouth fighting the school tax. If this doesn't go through, and then you're looking at, say, around $7,000 possibly here, 6,000 for.
Well, it's gonna be, it'll be more than that, because 5 years ago, it was 6,500, just for Alton alone,
But
right?
if you have several towns in it, it should be able to keep the price down a little lower.
I would think so. Yep.
So it'd be nice to get a feel of it, an idea of it. What it would cost. Because you gotta remember, gentlemen, we cut the budget 2% this year.
Sure, cut 5.
I think part of it was legal.
Yes, we only have $8,000 in that contract line.
Yeah, but we've got an administrative line, a government line there that has lots of money in it.
No, that's been cut over the years too,
Have lots of money.
by you.
I mean, you can cut out your own salary this year.
Yeah,
Sure, look at that. Look at the money you got there.
for that one, because I said no salary cut.
Yeah, but you wanted 2%
Right
cut.
back in and do it, so next year, we'll be miserable on it.
All right, I'll
Yes,
see
ma'am.
if I can get a ballpark amount from, Guilford on how much it,
Just, you gotta at least have an estimate. So,
all right. That's all I have. Yeah.
all right. Laura, do you have anything?
I have
I
nothing.
didn't think so.
I want to ask you, I knew once we're done.
Well, we're kind of done. What do you mean you have something?
Well, I asked when we were doing budgets, since you brought up budgets, I wanted to see the paperwork on having to pay back if we used the surplus on tax rate, that we had to pay it back, and that's what was doing the tax rate. And I wanted to see the wording on it. I've asked twice when we're doing the budgets and discussing it. I wanted to see how, I wanted to see why we have to pay it back. I wanted to see the wording from wherever they're looking.
Pay what back? I'm sorry.
The unanticipated funds we use to put on tax rate.
Last October,
Yeah, we were told that we had to put them on the one-time expenditures, or we had to pay them back.
Do you remember when you took the surplus,
I wanted to,
put it towards the operating budget?
and I said I wanted to see
yeah,
that.
through in the warrant articles, yeah.
And I said I wanted
No.
to see that ruling in.
This was 2 years ago.
Oh,
Oh, this was this year.
What, this year?
This year.
Oh, this year.
We couldn't use the
This year it's in the
because we couldn't.
warrant articles.
That's right. And usually we put it on the tax rate. We're told that if we put it on tax rate, we had to pay it back.
No. I think you misunderstood that. When you take the $500,000 out of the surplus fund, okay, so come next year, if you don't have that 500,000 to put towards the tax rate again, you're gonna have a spike up again. That's what it was, that you can't use it. You could have done the 500,000 this year, you could have done $1 million.
It was explained that we had to pay back the 500,000 if we.
You don't pay it back. Well, you do pay it back with your surpluses, or like in your auditor's report, you had excess revenues, which brought us back up to 2.9 million. But we'd use 500,000 to offset the tax rate. So come next year, if we didn't have the surplus in the budget or the excess revenues, so say if it was 2.5 million, we used the 500,000 to offset the tax rate, we're down to $2 million. If we didn't have a surplus budget or the excess revenues, you'd be at 200,000. So now you're back right at your old tax rate is increased because you don't have 500,000 put there unless you hit the 200,000, then you go down to 1.5 million.
so that's why it was recommended, if you're gonna use the 500,000 to try to help with the tax rate, you do it to the warrant articles that are like a one-time thing, not a regular annual warrant article.
Because the following year, you ain't gonna make it up.
Right, exactly. That is exactly right.
Sorry if you were misled on that. It's not
He
the way
was not misled.
I argued for half an hour at the meetings over this. Because you kept saying we had to pay it back.
Well, you do have to pay it back. So you could use it again next year, because if you don't pay it back, your tax rate's gonna spike. And that's what Laura tried to explain to us that night.
So what's the difference? I'm using it on the warrant article.
You're using on
Still
one,
spiking.
because you're using on one item, one time. And the surplus that we just saw from that last year, you're gonna roughly have the same, because we didn't spend as much, so the money will be back there, but you're not gonna have
You don't have to recoup it
You're not gonna have to pay for the fireboat of $150,000.
in the calculation.
What else?
But the following year, we wouldn't have to pay for the fireboat.
That's right, because it's only a
150.
one-time, it's only a one-time
I'm
expenditure.
gonna buy another
If
fire.
you keep taking $500,000 out to offset the tax rate, and you can't replace that 500, your tax rate starts to spike upwards.
And if you're using that 500,000 on one-time buys, if I use it on, you don't have to come up with it again.
That's right, because it's done on paper. But say next year, you might not even have to use half as much of what we did this year because of one-time buys. You might not have anything.
Virgil, what you gotta understand is at the beginning of your tax season, when you're doing your budget, you start at 0 every year. So if you start to build, and if you go over what you budgeted last year, your tax rate's gonna increase.
That's right.
If you go under, it's gonna go down. So if it goes down because you used your fund balance, the following year, you're starting at 0 again.
But we keep a certain amount in that fund balance. We should be able to take 500,000 out of that, put it on taxes, not warrant articles to take the voting away from the people. Put it on the tax rate, and you don't have to come back up with that money for that 500,000.
The following year you would, unless you put it every single year.
We didn't take it away from the taxpayers. They're still voting on each and every warrant article.
You take that,
By putting the 500,000 just against the tax rate, you're not giving the voters a say in that money.
yes, you are, because you're giving it back to the voters.
You're not really giving it back to the voters.
Yes, you are. You're giving it back to the taxpayers. By paying off a warrant article, you're taking that vote away by saying, no, we don't want the vote. We put it in, say, the equipment fund. That's $150,000 that we spent that they don't have a vote on. There's no vote.
But the way the Board of Selectmen set all the warrant articles up a year ago, the capital reserve funds, the equipment fund, the people don't have a say what you buy anyways, because they made it as selectmen, as agents to expend, and they can run it down to 0 every year, which happened a few years, 10 years ago, when they bought a 1-ton and a backhoe.
And we also, most of the time when we're gonna buy something, we put it out to the people.
No. You don't put a dump truck out every year to the people, and you've sat here for many years, you've never put the dump truck out to people.
In my opinion, that's one of the drawbacks of
Adding a truck, they're not replacing a truck, and we're not buying anything new, we're replacing a boat.
You're replacing a $20,000 boat with a $300,000 boat.
That's more than 20, the old one is more than 20,000.
The old one was more than $20,000.
Yeah, the current.
And this is the misrepresentation out there in the public. Yes, $300,000 is a lot of money for a boat, but it wasn't explained to them, I think, as much as it should have been. With everything with everything that was laid out in that boat for the specs that it needs, everyone I talked to, different salesmen from different companies, that is the price of that boat. That boat is also made to carry a stretcher with someone on it that needs medical attention, whether it's a heart attack, whether it's open wounds or whatever, instead of just trying to hold them onto a boat, which really is very hard to right now what we have. Also requires a cabin for firefighters in during bad weather when they're going out there. So this is more than just a boat you get into and you go out and you suntan yourself in the middle of Lake Winnipesaukee. This is a working boat.
I know, I use that just as an example.
I know, but it just irritates me because we got somebody out there in the community saying they don't need this $300,000 boat. The unfortunate part, what the gentleman didn't say, $150,000 of that money coming for that new boat is coming from the revolving fund of the ambulance, which has over $676,000 in it, which the insurance companies paid back to the town of Alton for the residents that used it. So half of that boat is being funded by insurance companies' money, which I say that's got to be fabulous because
That's if we change that account, if they vote to change the account.
no, not that account. That account's already been used for it, so we can use that as part of the equipment.
Because the boat is used it's like
50% of the boat.
yes.
So, I mean, the misrepresentations of an individual in this community trying to say it's a $300,000 boat, and it makes it sound like they're going out cruising Lake Winnipesaukee. They're not. It's a working boat for emergency apparatus, just like the ambulance is, just like a fire truck is. And it just galls me that someone would put out that misinformation.
I think we should get a helicopter.
Might be coming, sir, in 2040. Anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm all set.
All right. Sorry, ladies, we got on a little tangent there. To the audience, sorry too. All right, we're going to move on to the minutes of February 1st, 2021, regular meeting.
Make a motion that we approve the February 1st, 2021 Selectmen minutes.
You can do that, you weren't there.
It was.
Virgil McDonald.
Yeah, legally he can.
You can make the motion, you just don't have to vote on it.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
I didn't
Do I
realize.
have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion made by Virgil McDonald to approve the February 1st, 2021 minutes, second by Mr. Whitman. Any discussion? Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Didn't realize it.
Mr. McDonald?
Abstain.
Yes, votes in affirmative, one abstention, Mr. McDonald. That's right, Virgil, it's getting late.
Yeah.
February 1st, 2021, non-public session.
Yes, I move.
Statement to divulge number one.
I would wait on number 2 as well until after the contract is signed, which, by the way, it's in that folder.
Motion to approve the non-public session, February 1st, 2021, non-public session, not to, and to keep it as not to divulge. Item 1 and 2. Do I have a second?
Yeah, second.
Item 1, to approve the February 1st, 2021, non-public session, that is seconded by Mr. Whitman, and not to divulge item 1 and 2. Any discussion? Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes,
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
were you there? You weren't there.
Oh.
Am I in the minutes as being there?
Says excused.
It says excused, but I'm in the minutes.
All right, wait a minute. All right, so, were you there or were you not there?
I must have been to explain to have it put in writing and stuff. I was there, because I explained the whole thing. Well, I just looked back and I said, geez, I must have been there. So I'm trying to go through the other minutes.
But it says
Excused, yeah.
No, actually, you are not listed in any of the votes when you go down to the bottom of the page.
that's true.
All right.
Yeah.
Then how do I get the complaint and stuff that's in the wrong minutes section then?
Did he excuse?
Wait a minute.
he didn't show up for the meeting.
Read the top, item 1, read it very carefully.
You talking to me? Oh.
This is where he'll understand.
Yeah, but, and I realize that it's last week. Why would it be put into these minutes this week?
This is on February 1st, okay?
Right. And this is last week.
But this would have been from January last week. So in January, you were at a meeting, you had requested something. I had to bring it back to the board. You were out that meeting.
Yeah.
But we had already approved those minutes. Because that was from January. If you want to hold off.
I'm just saying, because I was, remember, you know what I mean? I was present when I gave the move.
Yeah, but we approved those minutes because that was a meeting in January. I had to come back for that following meeting,
For the status update.
the status update.
Oh, so then that's what this should say.
And what,
is status
and
update.
what that referred to was, it had to go a different route than what we wanted it to. That's why your name was there. You want, I'll explain to you afterwards.
Well, it says just what you
Yeah.
said at the meeting. Yeah, you better, after I'll talk to you on it.
All right, at this point, February 1st, 2021, non-public session minutes, I'd rescind my motion and postpone the approval of these minutes
Okay.
until we have a non-public session to discuss them, because I can't discuss them in open session. And right now, we have a non-public session.
You can approve it.
No, because you have a concern, I don't want to approve it. I want to be able to explain it, but I can't explain it because we don't want to divulge it. So, gentlemen, February 1st, 2021, non-public session minutes will be postponed. February 3rd, 2021,
Move to accept the minutes of the deliberative session, February 3rd, 2021.
Second.
Motion made by Phil Whitman to approve deliberate session warrant article recommendations, seconded by Mr. McDonald. Any discussion? Hold the board. Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman? Yes.
One question.
Yes, sir.
When we go deliberate session, that's the budget committee's budget.
Yes, sir.
How come? And then it's all our warrant articles? That's why we
It's
have.
our warrant articles, yes. The only budget that's there is the sweep.
Just the sweep.
Yes, sir. At least that's the way I understand it. February 8th, 2021.
I was here on this one.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you were back.
Motion to approve is submitted.
Make a motion, we approve the February 8th minutes.
Second.
Motion made to approve the February 8th regular meeting minutes, second by Mr. Whitman. Any discussion? Hold the board. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Wentworth, yes. Vote affirmative. February 8th, 2021, non-public session. No, keep going. Flip over. Keep going right there.
All right, I thought we.
You did. Yep, keep going. Flip over.
All right.
Read through it. Okay, it's right there. Number two, has number two been recorded yet?
A letter was sent with the decision, yes.
That can be released.
Yeah, I think it can, because it was brought to you all in non-public, you made a decision, and the owner was notified of the decision.
Number one and number three should stay not to divulge, but release number two.
I think number one could be released, but number three, I would recommend keeping.
Holding off till the contract is signed.
Right.
Someone do I have a motion to approve the February 8th, 2021 non-public session, releasing item number one and item number two, but leaving number three not to divulge.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made by Reuben Wentworth to approve the non-public session of February 8th, 2021, divulging number one, divulging number two, but keeping number three not to divulge. Second by Mr.
Are
Holt.
we getting the answers to number one rather quickly?
Going through the process.
It says that we.
Okay, wait a minute. You guys haven't finished up approving this or releasing it, so you really shouldn't be talking until the vote's taken, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think you were talking about the wage increase.
Wage in the description, job description, and everything.
So let's release it and then you can ask. We did have discussion.
And
I'll poll the board. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Wentworth, yes. Votes affirmative. Okay, number one. Go ahead, Virgil.
Are
Ask
we
your question.
getting the paperwork and stuff fairly quickly?
so
This,
it's already been sent out to everybody, all of you, like a week ago, last week.
are we gonna get in the meeting on the agenda?
If you would like it on the agenda,
Well, I think it has to be put on the agenda so we can vote. We have to do a vote on it and discuss it.
We want to talk about raising the increase of the wages on that
right.
caregivers.
And I sent a thing out on the manager's listserv, and I did not get any responses on it, so I have nothing to compare it to.
Yeah, but can't we just ask Mary what's expected of them on the job?
Yes, and you already have that information. So,
Get that put on the agenda?
yes,
Put it in the agenda book?
yes, and how about non-public then, since you're gonna be talking about a specific person who,
No person. We're
It
going
could
to
be
talk
no
about
person.
the position with the
Okay.
wages.
so future position, same category.
Future position with.
No person, doesn't matter what person's there.
Okay,
He just feels what the town offering for caregivers through the HIKE fund, to go into somebody's home, help do their errands or whatever they gotta do.
That's,
The wage is too low.
and that's why we're having trouble getting people.
Yep. So he's just trying to see if it should have a better pay increase. To that point, to bring it up from, say, a $12 up to maybe a $15, at least a minimum you know, something there, because I don't think we start many out at 12 unless they're lifeguards or,
Yeah, school kids.
Cemetery department, actually, some labor positions are pretty low, unfortunately. But yeah,
Well, we're getting better.
I still work for the town for
Definitely.
$12.50 an hour, you pay all the benefits, retirement, vacation, I'll do it.
I'll definitely.
But we're playing better because we're not paying people that are mowing the lawns more than what we're paying truck drivers now, so we're doing better.
Right, so I will make sure you have the minimum maximum chart in the documents that were sent out previously, and you guys can make a decision.
Yeah, just because I don't want to get down to this one, I can't get another one.
Yep,
Hey, gentlemen, moving on to
there is no consent agenda. Oh. Oh.
You all right this week? No consent agenda, no.
discretionary action request for appointment, there is none. There is no non-public session. Gentlemen, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:07.
Second.
Made by Lou Warren to adjourn at 8:07, second by Mrs. McDonald. Discussion. And now for the rest of the story.
Okay, Paul, happy.
Poll the board.
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Whitman. Yes.
Haven't heard that in a long time.
We were just talking about the other day.